Hello, I'm Randy, and this is my introduction into the vinyl community. This is my first video. I'm doing a vinyl tag that Dylan started at Noble Records. I thought the questions were good, even though it was several months ago that this tag came out, but I thought I would use that for my introduction. My first question is, favorite record from your city or state? Well, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, and we've had a lot of jazz and blues artists from this area, such as Big Joe Turner and Jay McShann and Benny Moten and Charlie Parker. Count Basie got his nickname from here and spent some important years here, and so did Andy Kirk and others. But most of that I have on CD, so I'm going to do a rock band from Kansas City called the Rainmakers, who had a nice Thomas Hart Benton painting for their cover, and they had a semi-hit with Let My People Go Go, but they were a good Midwestern band and with some unique lyrics, and this is probably their best album, was their first album, but I really like this record. Second question is, an album you highly recommend? Well, I think it would be Josh Ritter's The Animal Years. I think this is one of his best albums, and I think he's one of the best lyricists right now. It's kind of what we'd call folk rock, I guess you would call it, but a really good album. Wolves is a really good track, and two of my favorite songs from the last few years, Thin Blue Flame and Girl in the War, are both on this album. Really good album, I recommend. The next question, a tip for beginners. Well, the only tip I would have that I could think of right now is that there's a lot of reissues on album of discs from the past, and it's really important to kind of research a little to make sure that the version you're getting is cut well and sounds well, and I would research it a little bit before I bought some of the reissues. First album that got you into deeper music. I'm not sure what deeper music is exactly. I guess something that took you out of your comfort zone maybe, but at the time in high school I was listening to things like Kansas and Styx and some of those groups, and in college I heard it was on this 45 single by Elvis Costello that came with the Armed Forces album, the American version. The UK version has that as the cover, but included was this 45 disc, and I had heard on the radio a song entitled Accidents Will Happen, and it was a slowed up ballad version of the song. I go, hey, who is this? And kind of got me into exploring Elvis Costello, which led to Graham Parker and many others. And so this was actually the one that got me into it, and then I bought this album, of course, to get it. I think it's my favorite Elvis Costello album as well. An obscure record people may not know about. I'm picking an album by the Funky Kings, which had Jules Shear of Jules Shear and the Polar Bears, and I'm trying to get my glasses, I can't remember all the people in the band. Jack Tempchin, who wrote, I think it was Peaceful Easy Feeling for the Eagles and another song for the Eagles, but he also does the song Slow Dancing on here, which I like his version better than the Johnny Rivers hit, but they only lasted for one album, but I think this is a pretty unique album, Funky Kings. Next, a group that you collect all of their albums or try to. Well, I have more albums by Jerry Lee Lewis than probably anyone. And I even have 3 Bear Family collections of his. This was Southern Roots, back home to Memphis. This was a really good album too. But I liked a lot of his country stuff as well as his early rock stuff. But that's probably somebody I collect all of their music. A band whose second album is better than their first. Well, it's not a band, but I'd say Bob Dylan, Freewheelin' was a step up from his first album, which is mostly covers. And another one of my favorite artists, and this is a great album too. Show and Tell a Whack-A-Mole. Well, most of my records are spread out, and I do have some down here. So let me just turn this off and take this over here. Okay, these are records I have down here. Let me put my hand in there and grab one. Go back over here. Oh, what did I grab? Oh, this is the Youngbloods, which is an interesting album in that I lent it to a friend, and the second album in here was actually something else. I've never found my second copy. It must be on some other album somewhere, but this is like their greatest hits. They had such hits as Come Together, and All Over the World, La La. Oh, and they did a bunch of covers too, like CC Rider and some of those, but Get Together is probably their most famous song. Okay, next one. What album have you listened to the most in your life? That would probably have to be... I thought about this, and I know when I was younger, I didn't have that many albums. I listened to some of them repeatedly. But once I found this album, I've listened to it a lot every year, and I'm always listening to it. And it's also what I think is the best album of all time. It's Van Morrison, Astral Weeks. Great album. Astral Weeks, Sweet Thing. One of my favorite songs of his is Madam George. Great song. Anyway, that's probably my favorite. Oh, and the bass on this album is unbelievable. And he arranges horns like no one else. Next question. Show an album with a story, crazy story. Couldn't think of an album with a crazy story. Some people did it as how they obtained the album or how the album was made. The most crazy story, I think, is actually a single. This is Poco, Keep on Trying, which is a very good song. I think Timothy Schmidt wrote it. But when I was going to college, I was coming back, and there's a big field in front of where the dorm is, and it was snowing. It was up in Iowa. And there was something kind of shiny out in the snow, and I went out in the snow, and this was sticking in the middle of snow, and the dormitory was kind of behind the dormitory, so I'm figuring somebody got tired of it or whatever and threw it out the window into the snow. So actually it was in very good condition. And the funny thing is, I love this song, Keep on Trying, which is a promo copy. It's on both sides. But I don't have anything else by the band except for the single, even though I like Lurchy Fure when he was in Buffalo Springfield and all that. But I guess he wasn't there at the recording of this song, though. Okay. Your collecting pet peeves. Well, I used to go to a lot of auctions, and I would just buy the records. You get them for cheap at the auctions, and Of course, there's a lot of Percy Faith and other things in there, but a lot of times you find some good, and you got them for cheap. But with the advent of the internet and Discogs, you don't really have to know anything. You just go out and the Discogs I love, but it's also a pet peeve in that you don't really have to know anything. You just look it up on Discog. Oh, this album's worth something. Or you could used to get a lot of things for cheaper. Than now you have a little competition, I guess. An album or group people would be surprised to know you like. I don't know if anybody'd be surprised at what I like, my friends, but picked out a couple. I kind of like some of the, well, this is Henry Mancini, Mr. Lucky, which is a TV show that only lasted for one season. It's actually a pretty good television show. He had a boat called the Fortuna that was out in a harbor and where people could go and gamble, and he would solve crimes and whatever, but really good show. And this is kind of more of bachelor pad music, I would call, from Henry Mancini than some of the things you're probably used to, but I really enjoy that and some other bachelor pad music. I have some Jackie Gleason and some of that. I think some people will be surprised. Also be surprised that I like zither music. Most of it is because The Third Man's one of my favorite movies, and it really plays an important part in the movie is the zither. But and the next question. A record from the year you were born. So it's the fabulous Johnny Cash, his first Columbia recording. And you can figure that out when I was born. Show a 10-inch record or share an opinion on 10-inch records. Well, I don't really have any regular 10-inch records that are releases now, but I do have quite a few 78s. This is one of the picture ones that were done. They're called Vogue. The Vogue recordings that were, I think, from the 40s. That's this is a big band song, but I have several of those. But I like a lot of the 78s because you'll find some music and some songs that you're never going to find anywhere else, and probably on that 78 is the only place that it is. So I do like 10 inches. I just don't have any of the modern 10-inch records. Share an interesting fact about an album or song. I picked the Shepherds, which were kind of a bridge between doo-wop and soul. This originally came out on Constellation 1964, collecting a lot of their hits from the late 50s, early 60s. I guess not really hits. They didn't have any big hits. They had Island of Love, which got some airplay, and Tragic, which got some airplay. But they're probably my favorite doo-wop. I guess you would call it doo-wop, but they also have a lot of, kind of a bridge the gap between doo-wop and soul, which they were one of my favorites. The interesting fact about this album is when it was re-released in 1980, in 1981, Time Magazine called it one of the 10 best albums of 1980, even though it was originally in 64 and it was just a re-release, but really great. I'll probably talk about more if I do more videos about the Shepherds. They're a really important group. They got their name from Bill Shepard, which was a producer in Chicago, and he brought two groups together, the Ballads and the Bel Airs, and Mary Eskridge was one of the singers, and Millard Edwards is the other, who went on to the Esquires, but really important group there. Okay. Show an album with an animal on the cover. This is Nice Horse Shot. This is the Swimming Pool Cues. Kind of alternative country, I guess you would call it. Americana, maybe. But they're a really interesting group. Like some of the songs on here. I can't remember what they are. interesting group. Show an album with crazy artwork. I picked, this came out kind of during the new wave-ish era, album by D.B. Cooper. It's a promo copy. And then kind of got a blonde Marilyn Monroe like on the cover, crying, called Dangerous Curves. And on the back it's kind of a Stones-ish Exile on Main Street like put together of some really crazy images, which I thought it was kind of different. Show a really good album that you can find for cheap. And I picked, it's the Up Escalator by Graham Parker. This album didn't get so-so reviews when it came out because he had a lot of artists help contribute, like Bruce Springsteen and some others. Stupefaction was on here, got some airplay, Paralyzed, Love Without Greed, but Devil's Sidewalk, the whole album I think is actually great, and you can get it for fairly cheap. You can find it. I think it needs a reevaluation because I think this album is very good. Show an album with an acquired taste. I'm picking this by Eugene Chadbourne. I've Been Everywhere, where he sings and chants and uses jazz and country and all at once sometimes, and to say the least, I'm still acquiring a taste for that, and I don't know if I've acquired it yet. And last, show your most recent find. I've got this in the mail. I haven't opened it yet, but I've ordered it on Amazon, so I've already listened to it from the download. But this Elvis, Way Down in the Jungle Room, very good. This was done, I had most of Elvis, but I didn't have a lot of this time period when I recorded this. This is recorded in Moody Blue and another album around this time with sessions down here, and got some really interesting music on here. If you're an Elvis fan, you really need to get this, Down in the Jungle Room. And that concludes. Hope I did okay. Maybe I'll do another one. Take care. Peace.